Section 4 of Imperialism and World Politics by Parker Thomas Moon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Alistair. Chapter 18c. The League and its Mandates, Part 3. Subsection. Some Defects. The Bundeswats affair undoubtedly demonstrated the effectiveness of the weapon of public criticism as wielded by the League of Nations, but it also illustrated one of the fundamental defects in the mandate system. Dissatisfied as it was by the reports transmitted to it by South Africa concerning the rebellion, the League's Permanent Mandate Commission considered itself incompetent to send an investigating commission of its own to South West Africa, nor could it summon witnesses from the territory. It could only bring moral pressure to bear by the means of courteous criticism to induce South Africa to supply further information. Again, when the rebellion of 1925 occurred in Syria, the Commission did not dispatch field agents to investigate conditions in Syria, but rather requested France to make a special report on the situation. To supplement the reports of the interested powers, which are, after all, ex parte evidence, the Mandates section of the League prepares dossier of information culled from the press, parliamentary debates, and other sources. Moreover, the experienced colonial experts who sit on the Mandates Commission are not easily hoodwinked. Yet the inability of the League to send out inspectors or investigators whose reports could be set off against those of the interested governments remains a regrettable weakness in the mandatory system. Charged with the responsibility of ensuring administration of the mandates in harmony with the humane principles of the Covenant, the League is nevertheless inadequately equipped with specific powers for the fulfilment of its task. It cannot, or does not, issue orders for the improvement of conditions or injunctions to check objectionable practices. The Mandates Commission feels that it cannot consider petitions, from the Arabs of Palestine for instance, which question the terms of a mandate, for the terms can be modified only by the Council. If only the Council, on which all the mandatory powers are at present represented, can alter the mandates, and if the Council's decisions must be unanimous under the Covenant, a mandate can hardly be modified without the consent of the mandatory, unless the matter becomes an international dispute likely to lead to rupture, in which case the interested parties would have no vote. It is even less probable that a mandatory power could be deprived of its mandate on account of misgovernment, since the mandatories were selected by the Allied powers rather than by the League. A test case would probably lead to ingenious legal complications. The probability of such a case is, however, very small. Even the Mandates Commission considers the transfer of a mandate a very remote contingency. Still more fundamental is the problem of sovereignty, or of ultimate authority, which Article 22 discreetly evaded. In the Amos Report, 1920, on the fulfilment of the article, the question of the legal title over mandates was lightly regarded as a mere matter of form, perhaps, and it was assumed that in the B and C mandates the mandatory would enjoy a full exercise of sovereignty, subject to the obligations prescribed in the Covenant. The mere matter of form, however, soon appeared to have remarkable practical and material angles. What nationality could be claimed by inhabitants of a mandated territory when applying for passports? If the mandatory power conferred or imposed its own nationality on the inhabitants, the mandate system would be very similar to annexation. On this point, the conclusion was that the inhabitants of a mandate should enjoy a separate nationality, although individuals so desiring could be granted the nationality of the mandatory. The ownership of public lands presented another angle of the problem. Could France treat the public lands in the Cameroon and Togo mandates as French public property? The answer in this case was that such public lands and the budget surpluses must be considered the property of the mandated territory and used for the benefit of that territory. Again, trusteeship was differentiated from annexation. Even more urgent was the practical question whether a mandatory power could guarantee the protection of loans, investments of public and private capital in mandated territories, as it could in its own possessions. The possibility of the revocation, transfer, or termination of a mandate, remote as it might be, was sufficient to act as a deterrent to such investments, and yet investments were urgently needed for the economic development of the mandates. Accordingly, the Council, at the request of the Commission, declared, in September 1925, that financial obligations and vested rights would have the same validity as if the mandatory were sovereign, and that a mandate could not be terminated or transferred unless the Council had been assured in advance that financial obligations would be fulfilled and vested rights respected. The problem of sovereignty again took concrete form in 1925, when the Mandates Commission learned that there was a considerable agitation in South Africa for the eventual incorporation of South West Africa into the Union. The High Commissioner for the Union seemed to believe that South West Africa might in time be given independence, and then a treaty could be arranged whereby the white ruling class would agree to incorporation of the territory as one of the states of the Union. On this problem views differed, but an authoritative member of the Commission expressed the opinion that the spirit of the mandate system would be violated if, upon the demand of some 10,000 white settlers, a small minority of the population, the mandated territory were to be annexed. From these instances, it is apparent that the League is not disposed to concede sovereignty to the mandatories. It is even more obvious that the League, with its very limited powers, does not enjoy sovereignty itself. It is still more patent that only in a highly metaphysical sense could one regard sovereignty as being vested in the mandated territories themselves. Perhaps the legal arguments may be left to jurists. The practical difficulties, however, which arise from the vagueness of Article 22, are apparent to any layman, and must be considered as constituting one of the inherent defects of the present mandate system. Subsection: The value of international criticism. The mandate system may be toothless, but it is not bootless. Although under the terms of Article 22, the Mandates Commission has specific authority only to receive and examine the annual reports of the mandatories, and to advise the Council on all matters relating to the observance of the mandates. Nevertheless, the work of the Commission has been surprisingly effective and significant. This happy result is due in part to the wisdom which has been displayed in appointing members of the Commission. 5 members are citizens of non-mandatory states, and have shown no backwardness in criticising the mandatories. 4 are citizens of mandatory states, chosen not as national representatives, but as experts on colonial questions. For instance, Sir Frederick Lugard, former British Governor of Nigeria and author of books on Africa, was chosen as an experienced and enlightened colonial administrator, and has evinced admirable detachment in the criticism of British as of other mandates. Unless one has carefully compared the reports and minutes of the Permanent Mandates Commission with the successive reports of the mandatories, it would seem incredible that the power to receive and examine annual reports on the mandates could have been made to mean so much as it does. By means of questionnaires, the Commission has elicited information on topics which the mandatories might have wished to leave untouched. By detailed comments on the annual reports, it has suggested new policies or better methods of achieving desirable ends. It has administered reproof, courteous but unmistakable, to Belgium, France, Britain, or Japan, with no apparent discrimination between great powers and small. And often it gives praise, or expresses its appreciation of commendable changes undertaken at its suggestion, no less courteously. The range and spirit of the Commission's work cannot possibly be appreciated without sampling its reports. In commenting on the British report on Cameroons, it draws attention to the unsatisfactory condition of public health, and suggests that if it is difficult to secure British doctors, Great Britain should employ doctors of other nationalities. It notes with satisfaction in 1925 that France is paying special attention in Togoland to the development of vocational and agricultural training, a policy which coincides with the views expressed by the Commission last year. It hopes that South Africa will spend more money on native education of a practical kind, It asks to be more informed whether slavery has been abolished in the Transjordan area of the Palestine Mandate, and hopes that more money will be provided for village schools in Palestine. It inquires why there is an increase in the quantity of gin imported into British Cameroons in 1924, and asks that the next report on this area may contain a clear explanation of any definite plan which the mandatory power may have for improving native agricultural methods, for guiding the moral and social evolution of native life, and for suppressing such customs as cannibalism, which are repulsive to humanity. It congratulates New Zealand on the constant decrease in the death rate in Samoa, but is concerned to note the very high mortality among prisoners in Belgian Burundi. Belgium is asked to explain whether the labour levy of 42 days' work per year required by native chiefs in the Belgian Mandate, and the further requirements of forced labour for road work, are not inconsistent with the mandate. When it appears that some 6,000 natives are employed in building the Midland Railway in French Cameroon, working a 10-hour day with only one white doctor to care for the sick, and the death rate is about 80 per 1,000, the Commission expresses the desire that France should improve the medical service. South Africa is called upon to give detailed explanations regarding the land legislation in Southwest Africa, to show that the interests of the natives are not being overridden. The Commission has also the function of considering petitions or complaints regarding the administration of mandates, but up to the present time this function has not been fruitful. In 1925, however, it was suggested that its right of receiving petitions be interpreted with sufficient latitude to include memoranda and memorials of all kinds relating to the administration of the mandated territories. It is easy to see how this interpretation might lead to the development of a very important extension of the Commission's activity. Another potential function, it is not much more than that now, is the formulation and recommendation of general colonial policies. At present, of course, it is not difficult to discover behind the queries and comments of the Commission on the annual reports which come before it a set of principles or policies such as the encouragement of native education, improvement of public health, protection of the natives against forced labour and abusive exploitation. A bolder step, however, was proposed in 1925 by Monsieur Otz, the Belgian member, when he suggested that the time had come for the Commission to call to the attention of all the mandatories the danger of making excessive demands upon native labour. The vast programmes of public works, he said, the railways planned to cover enormous distances, the large industries which were being set up, the mining and agricultural exploitation of the country, the new concessions which had to be worked at a profit, all these operations implied at every turn a new and pressing appeal for native labour. The results might be tragic. Natives taken far from their homes to labour on railways, plantations or mines, developed tuberculosis or other diseases. The mortality was alarming. Another member of the Commission pointed out that recent reports showed a decrease of the native population. The Portuguese member thought that alcohol and syphilis, rather than work, caused the high mortality. Monsieur Rappard observed that reliable statistics would tell the story. If they indicated excessive death rates, it would be incumbent upon the administration to explain the reason. Finally, it was agreed that a question to bring out this information should be inserted into a questionnaire. Whether the Mandates Commission issues some general pronouncement on this topic or not, the fact that it can be discussed, as it was, is significant of the spirit which the mandate system has tended to develop. Whether the Commission issues orders and general rules of policy or not, its criticism of mandate administration is not futile. Whether the jurisdiction of the Commission is legally extended to other colonial possessions or all colonial possessions, or is restricted to the 14 existing mandates, the influence of the system cannot be confined by artificial boundaries. A keen British critic of imperialism, advocating the extension of the mandate system to all subject peoples, wrote the pregnant sentence, "In fact, it is hardly conceivable that the mandate system, if honestly applied, and the old imperialism can exist side by side. That the old imperialism will surrender, or that the 10 nations owning colonies will hasten to place their possessions in the hands of the League in the near future, only the most sanguine internationalist will dare hope. Yet it is true that the old imperialism and the new trusteeship cannot live together in so small a world as ours. The idea of trusteeship, the public criticism of administration in the mandates, and the careful study by the Mandates Commission of specific policies which benefit or injure the natives, must inevitably, though perhaps insensibly, influence the administration of the colonies legally outside the mandate sphere, and thus bring imperialism more under the control of humane principles and international public opinion. As the French Minister of Colonies, Monsieur Albert Sarraut, declared in 1923,
reforms accomplished in one place will inevitably penetrate elsewhere. Whether we like it or not, colonial questions have ceased to be purely national. They have become international, placed under the eyes of the world.
End of section 4.